In today's gospel, the risen Jesus calls us out of our fears and into the joy of his resurrection. In Luke's gospel, this is the fifth of 6 post-resurrection stories. In each of the stories, there are 4 common movements. First, the risen Jesus appears. Second, he eats. In the early Christian communities, it was important that Jesus had a bodily resurrection, and so him eating proved that. The third movement is that the risen Jesus teaches. And finally, the risen Jesus sends the disciples out. In today's gospel, the risen Jesus' appearance causes fear. Verse 37 reads, "They were startled and terrified and thought that they were seeing a ghost." Jesus anticipates their fear by saying, "Peace be with you." But still they were afraid. Notice, though, that Jesus doesn't rebuke their fear and doubt. Instead, he enters into it and invites them to touch him and see. Fear is a part of what it means to be human. It's not surprising, then, that in the Bible we are commanded not to fear 365 times. The problem, though, is not fear itself. The problem is that we let fear control us. Any parent knows what it's like to encourage their child in the face of fear. I remember my first piano recital. I was 8 years old. My mom walked me up the stage where my teacher was waiting for me. My mom said, "Don't be scared, you'll do great. You've practiced so many times, I'll be right here." I remember letting go of her hand and walking across the stage to the grand piano. I remember the stage lights. I remember starting to play and not making any mistakes. I remember it was a short piece, but that it felt like an eternity. I remember taking a bow and hearing applause. I remember the sense of relief and walking back to my mom and to my seat. I trusted my mom, my teacher, and myself. I took the leap and survived. When I faced my 3 professors last week in my 2-hour oral exam, I was anxious, a little fearful of not knowing the answers, fearful of failing, but at the end I faced my fears, did what I needed to do, and passed. I guess in my exam and when I was 8 years old, at my piano recital, I could have been overwhelmed with fear and doubt and anxiety. But thankfully I wasn't. Now, I know this isn't the case for so many students who face severe exam anxiety, or performers who experience stage fright and performance anxiety. Thankfully, we now have supports for folks like that, from coaching to therapy to medications. But for everyday fear and doubt, we can rely on our faith in ourselves, faith in the faith of others in us, and faith in the risen Christ. If we allow him, Jesus will enter our fears and doubts. Perhaps you can think of a time in which Jesus did that. Certainly, when we pray in times of desperation, we are inviting Jesus into our fears and doubts. In today's gospel, Jesus challenges the disciples to turn from fear and doubt and instead turn to joy found in his resurrection. As I was reflecting on today's gospel, a verse repeated over and over in my mind. It was verse 41. "While in their joy they were disbelieving and still wondering, he said to them, 'Have you anything here to eat?'" Again, while in their joy, while they were disbelieving and still wondering, he said to them, "Have you anything to eat?" 2 things strike me about this. First, the disciples were joyful, disbelieving, and wondering. Wonder is a gateway through our fears and disbelieving. Jesus stands at that gateway, and when we cross through that gateway, we experience joy. How many times can you say in your life, your wonder and faith helped you get through your fears and doubts? Whether that's starting a new job, starting a relationship, starting a family, coming to a new country or community, entering into retirement, and so on. Wonder and faith in God helps us through our fears and doubts. The second striking thing in this verse is the risen Jesus' question, "Have you anything here to eat?" I've mentioned how our early Christian ancestors, as some of us are, were focused on a bodily resurrection. This question is proof for them that the risen Christ is real, that his resurrected body is real. For me, this question embodies encouragement and reassurance. It's like my mom saying, "I'll be right here at my recital," or me telling myself everything will be fine before my oral exam. We all need some real and embodied reassurance. Jesus asking, "Have you anything here to eat?" is like him saying, "Get over yourself. I'm real and everything is going to be fine." Today we celebrate Moravian Music Sunday. In this wonderful tradition, we are reminded that music is a rich gift that we have received and we have a responsibility to pass on. Our earliest Christian ancestors sang. They sang to express their joy in the risen Jesus. They sang to encourage them through their doubts and fears. They sang to teach new disciples of Christian teachings. They sang as a form of prayer. This year, we are invited to consider singing as a way to show God's love and God's power to unite God's people. Our world is full of conflict, division, and war. The war in Gaza has been waging for over 5 months. The war in Sudan has been waging for over 1 year. And the war in Ukraine has been waging for over 2 years. There are so many reasons to despair, so many reasons to fear and doubt peace. And yet we sing. We sing despite our fears and doubts. We sing because it expresses to God and each other the longing in our heart for a world of peace and an end to violence. We sing to express sadness and grief. We sing to rejoice in all God has done for us. We sing because the tomb is empty and Jesus is risen. As we celebrate Moravian Music Sunday in this season of Easter, may we be moved from our fears and encouraged into faith and joy.